ripples of sand in the sand on the beach or something. Another mode of explanation is chance. Some things happen by chance, you know, the particular outcome of a roll of the dice or roulette wheel. And a third mode of explanation that we all use in our daily lives, sometimes unconsciously, is design. We infer that something occurred intentionally, deliberately, by an intelligent agent. Now, according to Dembski and other design theorists, we can use those three modes of explanation to account for things in the world of nature as well, that with evidence.
So is it the position of all three of you that the state should have no role whatsoever in determining what constitutes an education? Or if you're prepared to make compromises in that regard and, for example, prevent madrasas from teaching terrorism, then where do we draw the line? Don't we also have the problem that you are debating in a totally private educational system?
Wow. in 2 minutes or less. Yeah. Well, at the very least, school choice would be a nice start. You leave the public schools there for, I mean, we're not going to just dismantle them overnight, so at least let parents choose. And even well, some do with homeschooling, but more choice than that.
I wrote a book on libertarianism, so I guess I think that the schools ought to be private, and I'm not sure that I think your point applies here. I think there might be a case that, look, our society, even in private schools, is not going to allow the teaching of hatred and incitement to violence, but good and bad science, whichever is which, it seems to me there's not a case for government involvement. Jonathan? Let
me just add that I think the debates we're having here about the science, about Darwinism and intelligent design, will and should continue, private or public schools. But what bothers me right now as a taxpayer is that the polls consistently show that about 80 to 90% of the American people do not accept Darwinian evolution as I defined it. That is, unguided natural process produce everything that we see. And yet, so that's only 10 to 15% actually of the population believe in Darwinism, and yet the 80 to 85%, if it will, of the public who don't accept it are forced to pay for it to have a monopoly in the public school system. It's that taxpayer-supported monopoly that bothers me.
Right here, Tom.
Is this on?
It should be.
I'd like to ask Michael Shermer how he would answer the question that was just asked about falsifying a theory. How can Darwinism be shown to be false? It seems to me that if you have a philosophy, a materialist philosophy, as I believe you do, materials, atoms and molecules in motion is all that exist. The fact is that, you know, organisms do exist, we do exist, so we got here somehow, so they had to have whirled themselves into bats and bees and all the rest of us. So you don't need any evidence for evolution once you have that philosophy. It's just simply a logical deduction from your philosophy. So can you imagine anything being discovered that would in fact result in your saying, well, Darwinism can't be true in that case?
Fossil trilobites in hominid bedding planes.
That wouldn't disprove it. The conclusion would be that the trilobites actually survived all those millions of years, but they just didn't.
No, but based on the current understanding, this would be a serious problem. Evolution is quite testable. It's tested all the time. That's sort of a one-off liner answer, but the equivalent of that goes on all the time, every day in labs. That's what they're doing.
Okay, I'm going to call this to a halt so we can go have lunch and buy books. I want to thank Dr. Jonathan Wells for talking about his book, The Politically Incorrect Guide to Darwinism, and Dr. Michael Shermer for talking about his book, Why Darwin Matters. Thank you all for being here. Please thank our...
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.